First of all, thank you all for coming along today. It's really good to see you. I know some of the faces here. What I'd like to talk to you about, I mean, Jim mentioned something yesterday. It's a tactical trout talk, but Jim mentioned something in his introduction yesterday, and he didn't say it this morning. He said Guideline is an authentic company by way of everybody fishes in the company, right up from the financial director, the sales director, right down to the sort of trout bums like myself. I'm fortunate that I work with Guideline in a sort of development capacity and help them develop tackle, and it gives me access to a lot of equipment. And why I'm saying this is I'm going to show you what I use and why I use it. I'm not a guy, I'm not a tackle tart. There are things in my sort of armoury and my equipment that I just use for certain situations, and hopefully you'll see what I'm about and hopefully pick up some points. That'll be the first half of the talk. As ever with my talks, it's quite relaxed. Any questions you've got, I'll field them as we go, and I encourage that. There are no silly questions. Often when I do these kind of things, people will, you wrap it up at the end and you say, questions please. The heads go down, hands in the pockets, and they sort of shuffle away from you. And then I wrap it up and individuals come from the audience and say, Paul, I've got a question. And I say, blinking heck, that would have been absolutely fabulous for the whole audience. So please, there are no silly questions. Pretty much like yourselves, I'm very much self-taught and learnt on the way. And back in the day, we didn't have the interblobby, so I couldn't tap on and watch videos or get the knowledge like that. So I'd like to think I've seen a lot. I've made a lot of mistakes myself. Let's start with tackle with rods, for example. I've got three here with me, and my sort of go-to outfit, if we can just unravel it there. I'm a big fan. I grew up with a 9-foot 5-weight on a diet of that back in the day. It was a sort of popular rod. Due to the Europeans, they've influenced us with longer rods. Not so much for, yes, we can look at Euro nymphing, Czech nymphing, for example. We can look at these longer rods, but I like a longer rod for dry fly fishing now and for spider fishing. Any of you who fish wet fly, it's much more beneficial. And the reason is it allows you to hold more line clear of the water. And the more line you're holding clear of the water, the less likelihood of drag. Okay, and it's about presentation with dry fly fishing. So this is my sort of go-to. It's the Guideline Tactical LPX 9'9" 4-weight. Why a 4-weight? At the moment, with the rivers being low, we're fishing 2 and 3 weights because there's just that little bit more finesse landing the fly. It doesn't spook the fish quite as readily. 4-weight, often round this part of the world, it's quite breezy. Anyone from Cumbria or up in the north, it's often more breezy. And the reason is we've got a maritime climate. And where you get big land masses, obviously the land slows the wind down. And if you look at the UK roughly, it's like a wedge of cheese. Down in the south it's wide and it gets narrower as you come north. So we're subject to sort of coastal winds a lot, and it's often breezy. So the 4-weight's a compromise. It gives me a little bit of oomph to deliver flies in breezy conditions, but it's also got the finesse to deliver small flies and protect those finer tippets. So that's my go-to. Currently, as I mentioned, we're using 3-weight outfits. I've got an NT11 here, one of my new babies, currently sleeping with this rod a lot. Somebody picked it up yesterday and I was like, that's my rod. It's the NT11 9'6" 3-weight, and it is an absolute gem, a little bit stiffer. And look, when it comes to casting, we're all individuals. It's like our taste for food. We're all individuals. Everybody casts a little bit differently. What works for me might not work for some of you folks, and vice versa. And I'll show you a little bit later. There's some principles. If we adhere to them, we can also break the rules as well. Once we understand the principles in fly casting, that allows us to sort of just bend the rules a little bit. So that's the 3-weight I use. And the other one, again, it's a long rod. But you might be thinking, but Paul, what about when you're fishing an overgrown stream. A long rod's a bit of a hindrance. So I use this. This is a sort of more entry level rod, and I don't always pick the top end rods. I use equipment, I've got to be transparent. I write for the magazines, if many of you will know. So I've got to be transparent. I only use equipment that I would physically go out and source myself. When I came on board with Guideline, they kindly sent me some equipment. I said, yeah, I can deal with this. This is a good product, and we're slowly developing it and working with Tellis, who's doing the casting, salmon casting now, and Runa, who you'll see next on the trout demos. But this is an 8-foot 4-weight. Again, it's a 4-weight because then I just use my 4-weight line and reel off the 9-foot 9. And this is just for them smaller streams that I'm fishing. So that's the rods covered. Fly lines we'll talk about. I totally forgot about this yesterday. People said you prefer weight forward, double taper. I'm a weight forward man. A lot of modern day weight forwards now have sort of refined long front tapers. That's including the lines we do at Guideline. The CDC Fario is a good example of that. So they, and a lot of river fishing situations, you're perhaps only fishing 30, 40 feet away. You imagine you've got, we'll use just a simple calculation, a 10-foot leader on, your rod's 10 foot, you've only got 20 foot of fly line out. So in effect, you're still on the belly or just on the back edge of the front taper. So they land very, very delicately, because back in the day, again, I'm going way back, cast my mind back to my formative years, weight forward lines were a little bit agricultural. They were built for distance, and they did go, principally it was a brick on a piece of string. You know, that's the best way to describe it. Everybody favoured double tapers back in the day. Now there is a place for double tapers, and it's exactly what it says. There's a taper at either end, and it's got a thick belly section. For long distance casts and stable line in the air, if you're doing longer casts, a double taper is perhaps more beneficial. However, they take up a lot more space on a reel because you've got, in effect, a long belly on them, so they eat up room. And then for us northerners, or Yorkshire folk, anyone from Yorkshire here? Yeah, I'm sort of on the cusp of, I've got a foot in either camp. You can probably tell from the accent. With short arms and deep pockets, they can turn that round and you get 2 lines for the price of 1. Anyway, moving on, I just want to talk to you quickly before we get into casting. We overrun a wee bit yesterday on the demo, which was good because I had quite a lot of audience participation and questions. Which, any questions so far? Anybody? Covered all bases. Okay. Waders, I'm using currently the ULBC lightweights, and you can come and have a feel of these. They're super lightweight, if I can get my leader untangled from there, which I have. And they appear flimsy. I've had these for a year now and they're not leaking. I can't praise these enough, because my style of fishing is just walking about a lot, which is why I carry a backpack we'll come on to now. We haven't got the luxury of chalk stream fishing where you drive up to a beat, and often the short beats when you're fishing the chalk stream. So you might only have half a mile of river, 800 yards, something like that. So you can leave everything in the car, trot back to the car. Where I fish, and on this river and some of the clubs, Penrith Angling Association, for example, have got something ridiculous like 27 miles of river. Not all in one chunk, but they've got appreciable beats of water where there's several miles. So I arm myself to travel a long way, and this is where the lightweight waders come in. I do protect them. Let's just get that leader unwrapped. Not a day for long leaders, folks, wrapping around everything here. Boots, again, whatever you want, but what I really wanted to talk to you about was soles. Felt soles, arguably, in the river, offer the best grip on algae, especially when we've got algae covered stones, what we have just now. However, they're not that environmentally friendly because they harbour spores and things like that, and we can transfer things from one river to another. A typical example would be in New Zealand, where felt soles are banned now because it introduced didymo, a sort of algae or weed from America, which is technically an invasive species. And where you get an invasive species, as you know, often they've got no competitors, so it spreads quite widely. And didymo, not dissimilar to this, smothers the stream bed, and it denies inverts from oxygen. A lot of the invertebrates we've got in our rivers, the nymphs, they actually can't move the gills to generate oxygen. That's why they live in streamy water. I'm digressing now. See what happens. You practice this talk in your head and it comes out totally different every time. Yeah, just a little bit about inverts. A lot of them haven't got the ability to move the gills, so they position themselves in the fast water you can see over there, and the water rushing over the gills generates the oxygen. So when you get weed and algae over the stones, it can smother some of these little nymphs. So back on track, felt soles, best grip in the river. However, once they're wet, they can move spores and things from organisms from river to river. Secondly, if you're traveling, they're just a bugger to dry out, you know. Well, I prefer Vibram soles here. There's some tiny studs in these ones. These are the Laxaboot. I'm kind of like this with studs. They do offer a good purchase on the rocks. However, if I'm sneaking up a river and you sort of put your foot down like a ninja and it goes, makes this horrible crunching noise, you sort of recoil and retreat a little bit. So it's up to you. I'm just telling you what kind of works for me. Nice light pair of boots. I use knee pads. A little bit of both for me. Some of the places I fish. Here we've got quite a big river. There's a lot of noisy water, deep water, so you can probably get quite close to the fish by wading and standing up. And remember, when you're wading, the deeper you go, the shorter your profile gets, and you stay under that 10-degree refraction window of the trout. The trout's got a window of 97.5 degrees. Okay, we'll just typically simplify that, say it's a 90-degree window, but where the window comes up to the surface, it kicks off at a 10-degree angle. And under that 10 degree, if we imagine, let's just grab this rod. If we imagine this is the surface and our angle comes up there. In fact, let's have a bit of audience participation. Can you come and join me? Yeah, that's what I used to do when I was at school. Me, I didn't do it. Right, come on, son. Just put your arms out like this. Come this way to me. Let's do this. Face everybody so they can see you. Get your arms out. This is the trout's window. This is the trout's head. So here's the surface film. Once we get to here, there's a 10-degree angle coming off here. Below this, it's very obscure for the trout, and that's why I creep about to try and stay under that window, if you like. And when we wade deep, obviously here's us coming into the water, it allows us to get under that 10-degree window. Thank you very much. Is that your boy, Matt? Right, so hopefully that's explained. But the knee pads also not only help you when you're sneaking about, they protect your knees, and we're all getting older and I can feel it these days. Also, they protect your waders. Where I fish, we've got briars, barbed wire and thistles and things like that. And often when you're crashing through there, you can just get little pinpricks in your waders. They're only about a little bit more audience participation there. They're only about £12 and you can get them on eBay or Amazon. I prefer eBay these days. Try to keep away from Amazon, but we won't go into that political arena. Quickly moving on, another question that I often get asked, well, yeah, before we move on to that, just for me, very simple, some thin polypropylenes to wear. I don't fish in the likes of these. When I get to the river, I change into these just in case I fall in. So I've got something dry to drive home in, and obviously a pair of socks of your choice, just to wick the moisture away. Let's get on to the main hub of things, folks. Now, people often say to me when they see me, why do you need a big backpack when you're fishing? So I store my lunch in here. I've got an apple in here just now, things, my fishing licenses. I'll have a waterproof in there. I carry a spare rod, because often I'll end up maybe 5-6 miles away from the car when I'm fishing. I've obviously got water, carry another one. But what I really want to draw your attention to is the arrangement of the net. Okay, you'll see when I pop the pack on, the handle just sits at an angle here. You can see there. Okay, most people, when they pop a net on, and this one's the same, it's got where you pop your net and they hang it that way. To me, that net's just catching barbed wire and briars and things like that. It's an absolute pain. So I lift the net higher up onto my pack like that, and it's positioned like that. In the realms of when we're fighting trout as well, it can all happen quickly. You can hook a trout in a tight space, and we'll discuss fighting trout in a minute because I've mentioned 2 weights and 3 weights. Some of you might be thinking, have we got any beginners here today, newbies? No, excellent, great, thank you. There'll be occasions when you hook a trout and you think, how am I going to land it on a 2 weight or something like that? Everybody thinks the heavier the line rating you go, yes, arguably the more powerful the rod is, but you can even make 2 and 3 weights powerful. It just depends on the angles you use of the rod, which I'll show you once we do a little bit of casting. But yeah, getting back on track. So if I hook a fish and I use the angles like that, my net's just there, boom, I'm ready, as quick as that. I'm not reaching round for the handle. If it's hung this way up, upside down, you're often going, where's the handle? It's a little bit more difficult. So it just locates very, very simply like that. And it's just little things like this that often just make a difference. Just locate that. There we go. Now I tend to do mainly dry fly fishing. Get that back on properly when it wants to. I tend to do dry fly fishing, so rather than use Amadou, which is quite expensive, just use a little micro cloth. They're very, very good. One thing that's key to this vest, and obviously it's I like the waterproof one because you can just zip it up, go anywhere. I used to use packs that weren't waterproof, and you'd need a waterproof canopy or cover to go over them, and it's just a pain in the bottom when you've got them showery days. You sort of packs on and off, you've got it on and off, it catches up in your net, things like that. And I arrange myself, you see all the items have got a dark in colour. I'm a big believer there's a lot of things in the environment, the trout themselves, the weather we've got no control over. So anything, these little increments you've got control over can make a difference. I'm paranoid about having shiny things. Everything's black, you know, like black forceps, black snips. That's about as bright as it gets. I position my powder here for drying flies off. So when I catch a fish, let's say we've caught it on this CDC fly, I'll just use my towel like this, dry the fly off, pop this round, come out with the brush. I like a powdered brush because you can manipulate, get right into the fibres. Some of the powder shakes I don't like, and the reason is you've got to pop the whole fly in there, and it coats the whole fly, and it doesn't sit in an attitude you might want. You might have designed, let's say you've got a clink hammer and you want the back end to sink through the surface. So if you've treated the whole fly, it's reluctant to dig in. So that's why I'd recommend just getting one of the floatants or powders with a wee brush. Arrange my fly. This is the tactical vest, obviously. It houses a lot of fly boxes. There's a couple of dry fly boxes. There's another one there. They're always on the outside, so they're right to hand. Again, it's about convenience and speed. Dries on this side, wets and nymphs on this side. There's some spiders, there's some nymphs. I think we're being filmed here, folks, so we won't let the camera see this. There's a bag of nasties there, can you see that? So occasionally you might need to use them kind of things. On the inside, I just have my tippet materials and my leaders. And I want to just talk to you about leaders, actually. A lot of people, it cropped up yesterday. Let me just check the time, folks. like I say, I vastly overrun yesterday and I got told off for doing so. So, oh, we're good, we're very good. Leaders. So, tapered leaders. I guess most of you are familiar with them, you use them, yeah? So, you buy a tapered leader, you buy a 9-foot tapered leader. You tie a fly on, it's no longer 9 foot. You cut that fly off, you put another fly on. Depending on what knot you use, you've perhaps lost 3 or 4 or 5 inch off. Not only that, the diameter's getting thicker now. Your leader's becoming thicker. Say it's a 6X, approximately 3 pound tippet. It's now a 4 pound tippet. You change flies again. And we're all paranoid. We do several fly changes, don't we? You change flies again. It's now an 8-foot leader, okay? And it's got that little bit thicker. So it's changing. Not only is it getting thicker, the dynamics of the leader is changing ever so slightly. So what I actually do, we've got to keep quiet because this isn't good news for James in there really. I buy a tapered leader and I knot it at one end. I buy a 9-foot taper. On the thick end, the butt end, you've got a level section. It can vary from make to make. Usually on the back of the packet, it'll show you the leader profile, the length and the diameter at a given stage. I actually chopped 2 foot off a 9-foot leader, a 3X, which terminates in approximately 8 pounds. At 0.2 millimeters. Okay, I'm getting a little bit technical. Hopefully it's not too heavy for you. Why is it when I talk in leader diameters I deal in metric millimeters, and when I talk about size of trout it's got to be in inches? What's that about? Inches aren't any bigger, are they? But we do, don't we? We talk, oh, it's a 20-inch trout. So then I cropped 2 foot off, and in effect what I've got now is a 7-foot taper. I put a knot, a perfection loop or just an overhand loop, and I'll show you this after the demo, those of you who want to have a closer look, because I think it's a good system this. It's served me well for a lot of years. This is quite important. Most fly lines these days, including the Guideline ones, come with a loop on the end, manufactured loop. I actually like that system. I remember again growing up, I keep referring to that because another mistake I made, needle knotting your tapered leader onto your fly line was the way to go. The problem was, once you needle knotted it on and super glued it, it's a permanent fixture. You're stuck with that. And gradually you eat into that leader and then you cut that leader off, and then your fly line changes. You take 1 inch or 2 off your fly line. So I loop to loop this 7-foot section. When we get to the tippet end of it, the 8 pound, I actually use another loop. However, we had a good discussion yesterday where if you prefer a tippet ring, you can pop on a tippet ring here. Now below this part, I'm just grab a mouthful of water, folks. Too much talking. I often talk to myself on the trout stream in my head, of course, you know. I'm sure you all do that, especially when you miss a fish. A lot of expletives come out, don't they? So, on this 7-foot, below this I've got various lengths and diameters. This part I refer to as my datum, it's fixed. Okay, you just don't eat into that during your trout season. So below this, the tippet ring or the perfection loop, I now knot on. I've got 2 foot 20 inch there of, because this is 0.2, I'm down to 0.18. Because we're demonstrating, it's different on the other rod there, I'm down to 0.16, which is approximately 6 pound. Below that, I'll go down to 0.14 millimeter for my tippet, if that makes sense. I know it's a lot to take in, especially this early on a Sunday morning. So, what I'm trying to get over to you as stress, these lengths can vary. Say we've got a breeze and that breeze just came right then. You're never going to turn over 18-foot leader into a wind. You know, I hear people say this, oh yeah, I used to know a guy And he'd say to me, well, I'm going out to fish an 18-foot leader. You know, I'm thinking you build your leader to the conditions, okay? If you're on a pool tail, it's flat calm. The fish can be a little bit edgy because you've got flat water. Ideally, you want a longer leader, what you can cope with, okay? 20 foot. Now, that's not me boasting. I was fishing with Runa the other day. He's fishing like 22, 23 feet, you know, but what happens there? Why do we need such long leaders? I know we're bouncing about a little bit, but this is important, folks. I think you can take this away, and I think it'll help you in the future with your trout fishing. Don't get stuck. I'll tell you where we all got stuck with 9-foot leaders, because we didn't have the beauty of loop-to-loop connections. Back in the day, you actually put a knot in the end of your fly line and fashioned it through a loop. Do you remember that? Yeah, me too. I grew up on that. Well, that knot would jam in the tip ring. So the idea of a 9-foot leader is you didn't have to bring the fly line into the tip ring when you were landing a fish. Hence, you could net it because it was only 9 foot away. These days, we use longer leaders. The main reason for that, I'm going to again give you a very, very simple scenario. Imagine we're casting at a fish 40 foot away. We've got a 10-foot rod, so immediately we've got 10 foot there. Let's say we've got a 20-foot leader, okay? We've only got 10 foot of fly line outside the rod tip. What are the benefits of that? Your fly line is appreciably thicker than the leader, so the current's tail will move it about more readily and create drag. So I'd encourage you to fish longer leaders. And you might be saying, and we'll get onto this when we demonstrate a few casts, but Paul, it doesn't straighten out. Well, we're all sometimes too good at casting on rivers with straight lines. We actually want to build in some slack. And I use longer tippets because they flail down a wee bit, and that allows the fly to move about a little bit more readily, if that makes sense. So don't be shy of using them, and don't beat yourself up if it doesn't turn over. Ideally, you don't want that very, very straight cast, because once you put a super straight cast out, you've got tension between your fly rod tip and the fly, and it'll begin to move about, it'll begin to drag. And we ideally want our flies, our imitations, to conform with the currents, okay? So that's what we're chasing there. That's the ideal situation. Let's give it a totally different scenario. We're in the fast water, we're fishing upstream, there's a breeze ramping downstream. Turning over 20 foot's difficult. So you might shorten these, you might have this 7 foot, you might have 2 foot, that'll be 9 foot, and you just might have 2 foot of tippet, which is 11 foot, making it easier to turn the fly over. Now, you might say, well, what about drag, Paul? Well, there's a lot more movement over there, so the fly moves about that little bit more readily in the faster currents, if that makes sense. Okay, so I'd urge you to get yourself a leader and just cut 2 foot off to get a 7 foot section, and you can build on. And the beauty about that, if I just go back to my pack, is what I do. I buy these coarse fishing pole rigs off eBay, okay, and I wrap certain leaders around it, and then I can just take that leader off at the fly line leader connection and put on a different leader, a spider leader. I've got a spider leader here, and then we've got another dry fly leader here, and I've even got in here something a bit naughty, a sink tip 5 foot poly leader. If I want to get a streamer down deep, because let's say we haven't always got perfect conditions. Let's say you do a trip somewhere, you've saved up for a trip, you're going to Scotland, you may be going to Iceland, overseas or something. You get there, the river's carrying 2 foot of water. You'd ideally gone for dry fly fishing, okay? But it's carrying 2 foot of water. You've got 2 options. You either sulk in the cabin, or you get down to business and you get yourself something that'll sink and pop a streamer on and do some fishing like that. And that's why I carry these, and they're all interchangeable. You can just pop them on there. Was that you, Alvaro? Alvaro! Yeah. So that's why I do that, and it's a good system. It might sound complicated. I'm here all day. I'm happy to go through it with you, you know, in more detail for anyone who wants to see that. But all the guys have got onto it, think it's fantastic, and I'd urge you to sort of look at doing that going forward. And you know what? You don't have to spend a fortune on tapered leaders either. Right, let's have a look at some casting, folks. So one of the main principles, some of you will know this, we've got some beginners, thank you for making yourselves known, and I'm a big believer in being quite thorough when we're doing demonstrations, because you folks have kindly come along, we've got this sort of one shot. I want to give you as much information as I possibly can in the time frame. One of the key principles with fly casting is the fly line will follow the rod tip. So look, we can draw circles, figures of eights, Z shapes. Even if I just let the rod be stationary there and tap it, there's a reaction because the rod tip's moved, and that sends a wiggle down the fly line. Okay, what does that mean in terms of fly casting? Well, first of all, once we get this in our head, in an ideal world when we're casting, we want, let's assume this is the rod, this is the back cast, forward cast. We ideally want 180 degrees between the back cast. Let's assume here's the rod here. I'll just break this in half. Let's assume this section's the back cast, this is the forward cast. Ideally we want 180 degrees between back cast and forward cast. If we go a little bit wider like that, low back cast, low forward cast, we lose a little bit of tension. Not always such a bad thing. I prefer actually when I'm fishing dry fly to use more open loops because they move more slowly through the air and it gives me a feeling of time, I've got more time. If we go that way and close the gap, high back cast, high forward cast, that's when we get into the realms of tailing loops and things going wrong. We want to, at all costs, avoid that. Ideally we want this, and this is quite acceptable, and I'm a big fan of that as well. Okay, I don't feel you've got to be perfect. Be easy for me to stand up here, throw some tight loops, make myself look good, but I want to give you folks some things to go away with you that you can work with, some homework if you like. Just pop this rod back together. So in an ideal world, throwing the cast, I'll try and slow it down. We've got a bit of a breeze, so it'll affect the back cast. What I want to do, hopefully you can see, is back cast, forward cast, moving sort of parallel, if you like, or more horizontal, okay, in an ideal world. But in the grand scheme of things, or the reality of trout fishing on streams, in tight confines and things like that, it's not always possible to do that. It's relatively easy here. So just be aware of that. Now guess what? I teach this a couple of grips we can use. A European grip of the finger on top of the rod like that. You'll see Runa, any of you watch Runa's demonstration, he'll be fishing with his weird cranked finger as I call it. It's kind of like this. You'll see that. Oh no, God, I forgot we're filming this. It's cut that part out, Alvaro. Let me do that again. Runa will be fishing with his finger in a very attractive way like this. No, I'm a thumb on top guy, okay, and I like this because I use the thumb as a prompt, and it's quite a strong muscle through your thumb, okay. Now guess what? The rod tip will follow where the thumb goes. So if I stop the thumb in an upward direction, we'll just prepare that line. The rod tip throws the line high up there. Did you see how high the line climbed behind us? Right up there, nice and high. Okay, sorry, John. Runa, I'm just making fun of you. Sorry about that, my friend. Yeah.
Stealing my show as well.
No. Just the grip on the rod you do, that's all. Yes.
The crooked finger of death.
Yeah. So we're throwing our back cast quite high there because we stopped the thumb in an upward direction. Back to beginners there. One of the biggest mistakes people make is they think they're stopping the thumb in an upward direction. They come like this, they don't have controlled wrist, and the thumb drops like that. Now it's an inch or two here, up there it's amplified, it's 2 or 3 feet. And that will, in essence, throw your back cast, and I'll show you that now. It opens the loop, we lose slack, and it encourages you wrongly to rush the line forward because you think, oh my God, it's going to catch on the vegetation behind me. I better get it forward before it catches that. So a very, very common mistake is what we call uncontrolled wrist brake. Sure, when we're casting, our joints are fluid. They will move a bit. You'll see when I cast, I sort of cast like this. The hand will stop and I'll just flick the thumb, but it'll stop in an upward direction to throw a high back cast. What I don't want is the wrist doing this, and I'll show you what happens there. You'll see a loss of tension. There we go. See the tension lose out of the line, and I'm automatically rushing it forward rather than giving it time to extend. So where might we use a high back cast versus a low forward cast? Well, I'll show you right now because this is great. We've got a breeze coming this way. I'm just going to wander down there and make it difficult for Alvaro and cast this way. And what I'm going to do, we're going to throw a high back cast and low forward cast. The reason for the low forward cast, because any cast you make, once the line's unfolded, the cast is spent. It's not going any faster, any further, it's dropping to earth. Now if we throw this normal cast of like this, in a breeze, the forward cast, the wind will just catch it and bring it back towards you. So what you want to do is alter the casting plane to like this, high back cast, low forward cast. We've got this 180-degree rule, and as soon as the line straightens out, it sits down. So I'll wander down here, try and put the cast up here so you folks can see that. So here's your normal cast. Level line, watch this. See the line just fold back? Okay, well just prepare that line. Next cast we'll do a high back cast, low forward cast. See the rod, the line, the leader straightens out, it's really low, it sits down immediately. Okay, so again, just and this is perfect actually, this downstream breeze. Now conversely, and we're digressing a bit, anybody do lake fishing, boat fishing and things like that? Yeah, great, okay. You're on the boat, obviously you're drifting, which is beneficial, and you're throwing the line, the wind can help you. It can, and the higher you throw the forward cast, as it unrolls, it acts like a sail to straighten the line out. But this is when the back cast becomes a problem now. If we throw a high back cast, just prepare that line. The wind's catching it, and again, see, I'm rushing it forward because I'm losing tension. Here now, we can actually throw a low back cast because we've only got water behind us, and a high forward cast, and it just floats out nice for us, okay? So that's two circumstances. Now, I was just saying earlier, grab my water, about slack line when we're dry fly fishing. What we don't want is a super straight line. We actually want to build slack into the cast. And once you understand this, go away and practice it. You know, you'll easily achieve it. There's just a couple of golden things, golden rules if you like. What we don't want to do is a low forward cast like that, because let's say we're bending fly line, we want to put a mend in. Say we're on a river, hopefully you folks can see this piece of wool now, right down there, can you see that? Yeah? Let's say we're on a river and make a mend. Let's say the river's flowing this way from you folks out over to the Eden there. I make a mend, watch what happens to the line and the fly. It all comes dragging back to me. Okay, I tried to do it gently then. Let's do it, put a little bit more sting in that. Let's say we make a big mend. I've pulled it several feet. Now, admittedly, water tension would grip it a little bit more, but still you're dragging it away off its path of travel. So what we want to do is use an aerial mend. Put the actual mend in as the line is unrolling. Okay, And we can easily achieve that by applying this. The fly line will follow the path of the rod tip. We want a slightly higher forward cast. We're going to tilt the casting plane to like this. That higher forward cast, as you saw when we're casting into the wind, was detrimental. Now it affords us more time because the line has got longer to drift down, and that allows us to move the rod to put a bend into the rod or a mend. So let's have a look at that. Just throw that back cast, loop comes out, and there you see how much time I've got to, and I've just put the bend in there. Can you see that? Just very, very simple. Again, caught the grass that time, folks. Cast out, reach out, come back, okay? And you just put a mend in. You can do it the other way, very, very simple. But let's build on that. That's just putting a mend in. Where would we use that? Again, if the river's flowing from you, folks, imagine at the table there's a faster current. We want to bend the line to accommodate that fast current, and our fly is landing close to the bank where the current's slower. The reason currents are slower by the bank is because there's friction from the bank and the currents slow down. That's why you always get them soft edges on the banks, and as we all know, that's where the fish prefer to lie. It's where the insects get pushed into from the main current and accumulate. So it's just simple things like this, and understanding about the fly line will follow the path of the rod tip. Now let's build on that. Let's say we're on a couple of really complicated currents that we can't read too well. There's a riot of water moving about. We might want to put some bends in there, a wiggle cast if you like, to accommodate these currents, so it allows our fly a degree of freedom. So what we're going to do this time is a wiggle cast, where same principle, buy ourselves airtime and just wiggle the rod backwards and forwards, and you can see there's a series of wiggles in there. Okay, if you just hold that for me, please. Imagine, and we're allowed to do it up north, we're civilized, you're casting dry fly down to a fish, which sometimes you've got to do, seriously. You might have deep water down there, might be a fish on the far bank, and the only way you can get a dry fly to it is to cast down to it, okay? You put a series of wiggles in there. Watch how far I can go. Where's the fly at? Here it is. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 paces. That's how long a drift you've got, drag-free drift with your dry fly. So it's little things like that. Now, hopefully some of you are thinking, but Paul, you've got all these wiggles in your line like this. Fish eats the fly, you've got to get all that slack out. Is anyone thinking that? Because I'm thinking it. It's not going to happen on here because we haven't got that surface tension, but I'll make it, hopefully we can just do something a little bit like that. The mistake people make, and it's easy to do, and I sometimes fall into these traps these days, is they lift, when they set into a fish, they lift the rod up like this, like that. The fly hasn't moved, okay? The rod's up here at the strike position, or the set, and I've got no tension. So the way you do it, you actually strike, and I saw Runa do this on the river the other day. We had a day's fishing together. He actually struck sideways, and because you've got tension on the surface, it moves the fly instantly. So just try and remember that. If you've got slack in the system, just do a sideways strike. Let me just check time, folks. Phone's there, because I want to talk to you about fighting fish. And hopefully you'll appreciate, yeah, we're a few minutes over. Sorry, Runa.
Yeah, no problem.
You're probably glad of it.
Yeah. Keep going.
Right, just one of you grab this end of the fly line here, and I'll use you. Keep hold tight, please. So I see so many people, and especially beginners, and I'm not picking on beginners because I made this mistake as well, by the way. The sort of flex of the tip of a fly rod's about ½ pound versus carp, carp fish or predator fish and things like that. You get rods with 3 pound test curve on the tip and things like that. On a fly rod, it's about ½ pound. Most people, when they hook a trout, or I see people doing, they hook a trout like that and they think they're applying pressure. You just waggle your hand as though you're a trout, right? You can feel that pressure. Now, if I actually drop the rod now, all I'm doing there is bringing the tip into the play. It looks impressive. You're playing a trout like this, you're going like this, you've got the net, you think you've got a big curve in there. Hopefully you will feel the difference now and let the audience know. When you first hook a fish, I use a high rod because it might run quickly. There's a little bit less tension. When I want to apply pressure, I bring the rod like that. Can you feel the difference there? Because I'm bringing this arc, the lower section of the rod, into the game. And this goes back to what I was saying about 2-weight, 3-weight rods. It's about how you angle the rod. Then what we can do, because the fish is swimming in this plane, we actually bring the rod over like that, and it probably, hopefully you can feel even more pressure there. And you can turn the fish like that, and it allows you to get control and get fish in quite quickly, because obviously, hopefully you folks, well, I know you are, and you know, we're all conservation minded these days. Bulk of us, I suspect, practice catch and release. So the sooner you get a fish in, less likelihood of lactic acid build up, and you can get that fish back into the water properly. Because I can remember many years ago, and I need to be careful what I say because I put things in print. I never read what I write because you read it and you think, oh, did I say that? You know. Some guy wrote an article and it said, I hooked a 1 pound brown trout 10 minutes later, emphasis on 10 minutes. I landed it for a 1 pound brown trout. You'd really, ideally, should be getting that fish in the net in like 30 seconds or something like that. And the other thing, the big trout in particular, I'll wrap it up in a minute, folks. I can see Runa sort of hovering over there. The other thing is the big trout, we spoke about fish lying close to the bank. Where you get cover, like the willows over there, that's where your big trout sit, because if danger threatens, he can just slide in under the bank. And it's same when we hook them, he'll just want to get into the bank. And the first thing you want to do, rather than just stand there like that, is get that rod down, get some side strain on him and steer the fish away. What I'll do, final tip folks, let's say the fish is swimming towards the tent, I'll angle the rod this way to turn the fish. Once you turn the fish out, I let it swim down and then I angle the rod that way. The idea of constantly turning the fish is you're making the fish work and tiring it out. And you'll see them, when you practice this, you'll see the fish twist in the water. It's using up precious energy, it can't get a purchase, and you'll be hopefully quite surprised, pleasantly surprised how quickly you can get them fish into the net. Folks, thank you for your time. Any questions quickly, please?
In your waistcoat, you had pounds inflated.
Yeah.
Is that better than gel?
Right, so that's great. Thank you. So initially what I do, say it's polypropylene flies, yarn wings and things like that. I'll apply some of the Guideline HND. This one's, what I like about this one, and it's not a sales pitch, is it's a clear nozzle. Anybody use gink and such like, they've got a dark nozzle. You're doing this, you press it and a heap of it comes out. You've wasted a lot of it. Good thing about this, and I can actually see it coming down the nozzle, little drop out, that's it, because I can control it. Initially on the fly, I'll use this before I fish with it. Once the fly gets wet, I dry it out with this, and that's when the powder comes onto it. Okay, forgot to mention that, apologise. Any more questions please folks? All covered?
Emphasis on playing a fish sideways and like you do, like we all do.
Yeah.
Has that not got a lot of emphasis on loosening the hook in the fish's face?
Right, that again, that
It's fine line, isn't it? I mean, I do it sideways and everything. Sometimes I worry about.
so, you know, that again, that's a great question, and sometimes I do lose fish like that, and I do think, I wonder if it's because I did that, and it's one of them you'll never know. It's like we're having a discussion the other day. When you hook a fish, do you let it dive into cover and hopefully it'll swim about and then you can drag it out, or do you try and hold it, and if the leader pings, for example, again you're back to that. Should I have done it? Shouldn't I have done it? All I can say is, if I like to try and get control of the fish as soon as I hook them, rather than let the fish have its own way. So that's what I prefer. Okay, folks, can I thank you very much? And Runa, over to you please. Runa will talk to you a little bit more in depth about casting technique, leaders and dynamics and things like that.